All right. So first of all, thank you very much for being here. This is really a fantastic event. So during the keynote yesterday, Tom mentioned about the nuances, like the nuances really determine whether application will success or failure. And today, with my colleagues over here, we have this panel discussion talking about those nuances. So first of all, a little bit introduction of myself, and then I will go to the panelists. So I'm Tony Sun from Lux Research. So I'm the lead analyst of the electronic user interface group. So for those who are not familiar with Lux, we are a market research and advisory firm. So we help multinational corporate and provide strategic advice and ongoing intelligence to help them find new business opportunities in emerging technologies. So we have 21 different coverage areas, and going from agriculture to advanced materials to electronics to wearable electronics, and electronic user interface is one of them. All right, so for the coming 30 minutes, so what we're gonna do with our panel is really talking about the nuances. So we're gonna basically talk about two things. The first, what are those nuances? We mentioned that a lot yesterday, different form factor, different durabilities, different comfort. We'll talk about those. And on top of that, how to act. What's the action on them? So that comes to the second part of this panel discussion where with our panelists, we'll discuss about how to pick the right form factor based on those principles, based on those nuances in their experience. So with that, I'd like to give a brief intro of the panelists today. So we going from my side over here. So we have Brian Mccarthy, Senior VP in Operations at Nature's Best, and we have Lance Anderson, and he is the VP of Enterprise Sales of Vuzix. And we have Peggy. She's really the star of this event. Mentioned almost every presentation today, so I don't want to bother time to introduce her again. And we have Todd Wynn. So he is the Construction Technology Management Manager at Roger O'Brien Construction. And then we have Ben Cooper, who is the Senior Manager of Research and Testing of VF Corp. All right, so with that, I'd like to turn to our panelists, let them to introduce themselves and how they are relevant to this topic. Brian, please.
Good morning. So I'm Brian Mccarthy, Senior Vice President of Operations for Nature's Best powered by KeHE. And to qualify that, we are a national distribution organization of specialty, gourmet, natural, and organic food products. You might know us best by some of our clients, Publix, H-E-B, Fresh Thyme, Sprouts Farmers Market, Safeway, Albertsons, Save Mart, out on the West Coast. And we've been in the wearable market since early 2000s. And before we get into nuances, obviously there has to be a hard ROI. I've heard that talked about a few times. We have about 600 to 700 users in the market in terms of our forward deployment of wearables. We've recently gone through an implementation here across the nation of a wearable programs last year in the fiscal year. And so we'll talk a little bit about the nuances in our selection criteria, but I wanted to lead with the ROI piece of it. I know that's a later discussion. So we take a look at hard ROI first, and then we take a look at some other selection criteria, including nuances of versatility, flexibility, and scalability.
Good morning, Lance Anderson, Vice President of Enterprise Sales for Vuzix. I think we all know my play in this conversation. But we're at an interesting point for Vuzix as we transition for the first time to a second generation smart glass product. And it's very interesting to see where we went from the 100 to the M300, which you can all see out there in the lobby. And it's a culmination of these types of conversations. What you design in a lab is very different than what you should be designing, and getting that feedback from people in the field, you can see it in the new product, and very interested to talk about that today.
I'm Peggy, and for anyone that was here yesterday, you know that we have a very small team of passionate people that have really driven this from one pair of Google Glass through the process. And I think it's really important for us that we've stayed very true to the business requirements and criteria in the plant, safety being number one. So our tool of choices, even though we love to go to forums where they have really cool things and we like to think futuristic. We've stayed very true to what we're trying to accomplish with the business and our safety guidelines.
Todd Wynn, Construction Technology Manager for Rogers O'Brien Construction. We build buildings. We're a general contractor, much like the building we're in today. We definitely are full of deskless users in the field that require a rugged way to access information and capture information. We've tested a variety of different wearables, from heads-up displays to muscle activity sensors to RTLS systems to virtual reality, DevKit 1, DevKit 2, Oculus Rift, virtual mock-ups, so on and so forth. We've been playing in the space for about 3 years. Excited to be here today with all of y'all.
So my name is Ben. I am Senior Manager of Research and Testing for VF's Global Innovation Center. If you're not familiar with VF, I'm sure you're familiar with some of our brands. We are the parent company for brands like the North Face, Timberland, Vans, JanSport, Eagle Creek, Lee, Wrangler, and about 25 others. Wearables is like the elephant in the room, right? I mean, and here, obviously, everyone knows the importance of it. And so it's, for us, you know, we wanted to, of course, see where there might be opportunities. The consumer-facing piece is obvious. There's a lot of opportunity there, but part of what makes VF so special and I think runs so well is our back end, that we have a really strong supply chain, that we have a very strong manufacturing capabilities, and we can scale things. And so, you know, being able to be just even a little bit more efficient offers the company and our customers so much more value. And so, with that being said, we've taken a lot of time to do our due diligence to kind of look at all the steps within the value chain and assess where are the largest opportunities for us. And I think I have a bit of a, you know, maybe unique perspective on how we kind of view things, and hopefully we'll be getting into that here.
Great, awesome. As you can see, we have a mixture from the developer side and from end user side. And this is a really big topic that we can discuss for days, but hopefully for the next 30 minutes, we can, our panelists and as well as the audience, we can have learn some insight and see what are the lessons that these people have learned, and we should all avoid those problems. All right, so the first thing, what are the nuances? So actually, Emily from BrainXchange last month posted a really awesome blog that I would suggest everyone to take a look. I have a clip over here, and within that blog, she pointed out 4 different criteria. The first, comfort. I don't want to explain that a little bit. Just take a look at that picture. It has to be light. You need to wear it, and without feeling that. And usability. For all devices, we need a certain type of interaction. Whether it's input, it's output, we have displays, we have audio, we have voice control, gesture control, touch controls, all different types of interfaces. How to pick? So what's the best use case? What's the best design for different use cases? And durability. It has to be strong. We've seen different pictures of smart glasses fell on the floor, or tablets falling on the floor, making them break. And finally, transferability. We are working in a team in an enterprise setup. So the devices are shared among people, and we never know over that course what's going to happen. So with that, I'll start with my first question for our panelists. So here we talk about 4 different things: comfort, usability, durability, and transferability. So can each of you kind of, based on your experience, tell me about what is the most important thing in one of your use cases and why it matters? Brian?
I'll start.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think when I take a look at the nuances beyond selection, when we're in selection process, I mean, for me, when I take a look at usability, it's also versatility, right? It's rapid deployment, be able to get it out across multiple job functions. So I need a tool that not only is comfort for the users, so some of our folks in the forward deployment, much like you might have heard in DHL yesterday, we'll scale up and down on the employment side pretty quickly. So we're looking for a tool that, one, is user-friendly, right, that we can actually train and get folks up to speed. 2, as it relates to usability, is the ability to cross-functionally use it. So we use it in our selection processes, the ability to pick the right product, in our receiving operations, ability to receive and put away the right product, in our replenishment and our forklift products. So the ability to use it across multiple job functions is a big consideration for us. So early on in Wearables, we found it somewhat limited to certain job descriptions with within our environments and distribution. Now the choices that we can make are a lot more broad in terms of being able to use it across multiple job descriptions. And of course, that leads to asset control and sharing of assets in between different shifts. So in the old days when I had to have an asset for a picking crew, which was different than an asset of a receiving and a replenishment crew, today I can share that asset across shifts. So usability is an extreme, I think, nuance that we'll take a look in a selection process. And then on the safety and wearability side, wearing the devices for 10 to 12 hours in the distribution model is key. It has to be durable for us because we're getting on and off material handling equipment. We're going in ambient temperature to cooler temperatures and freezer temperatures. So when we get into the selection process, we like to keep it really simple. Can the device handle, a -20 freezer and come out and then be able to be deployed into an ambient temperature zone in the distribution model? So those are some of the nuances we'll take a look at when we're in our selection process.
I'd say for us, there's three most important things after talking with all you folks for the last year and listening a little bit. It's number one is wearability, period. Can you wear this? Can someone wear this 8 hours a day? The next is the feature set, right? So what do you got to pack in to get your job done? Do you need a GPS? Do you need Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that stuff? And once you pack all that features in there, go back to wearability again. Now, can you still wear it? So at Vuzix, we spent the last year, to be brash, we just shut up and listened and tried to bake that into our feature set of the new M300. Did we get it right? We don't know. You guys got to try it out and let us know. And it's the worker that wears it 8 hours a day that's really going to get you that feedback. And we did this for our engineers. We said, you know what? You put it on in a conference room, and you say, yep, this feels good, stable, doesn't fall off, and then they take it right off. I said, no, go wear it around the office for 8 hours a day, and then tell me what you think. And one of my key advices for all you folks out there is, if you're doing your pilot in a conference room, you're doing it wrong. Get out of the conference room, get out in the field in the sunlight, get into the dust, get into the noise, get into the warehouse. It has to be real, and that's how you're going to get it right. So, but wearability is absolutely everything.
So I'm going to do a cross of a few of them. First of all, I have to say, Vuzix definitely has listened to the customers that have the tool because it's far more rugged, and that was one of our complaints. It moved when you walked, which kind of can give you a safety issue, to be honest. So the vendors are listening, so now is the time to get involved because you have a voice, and it's far more rugged. I think for us, the safety piece of it's critical. So when we do a simple factory inspection checklist, that tractor may have 73 inspection points. 60 of them may be sitting in a bay, and the rest of them are out on a track. So they have to be able to wear those glasses while they're driving the tractor, while they're walking on the floor. So we've chosen that informed reality perspective so that we can look at information, but we're not always looking through an augmented perspective that could drive safety issues. I'm not even sure our safety team would approve it right now because we're at such the beginning stages. And I think the other point is a lot of what we talk about with the cross-functionality and the being able to share tools, that comes back to Prosedics, that comes back to my application, that comes back to my ability in the software to have all those tools talking to each other. So really, here it's the putting the glass on, being comfortable in the glass, having the users be comfortable in the glass, having them be safe in the glass, and having it meet those business requirements is what we really focused on. And these guys are listening, so now is the time to talk.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In construction, we're exposed to a variety of different environments depending on the project. I know Brian mentioned coolers. We install his coolers. We commission those, so we're entering those. We're based out of Texas, so we get 100-degree temperatures. On a pan deck pouring concrete, it reaches 126 degrees. Our iPads shut down. They actually do have a temperature setting inside. We have a big problem with that. When they reach close to 100-degree temperature, they turn off. All the information that we're depending on turns off. So definitely durability, reliability. You knew you were going to get that from the construction guy. But first and foremost, it cannot disrupt the worker. So I definitely go back to comfort and wearability. It has to aid the worker. They already, in our industry, are doing a job that is not easy. It's not fun always. It's tough. And they're going to rip it off and throw it away if it's making their job harder and it's making it physically harder. So I think that's definitely the first place. It has to become visible when we need it, and it has to become invisible when we don't. So we start there, and then of course we need it to be reliable and user experience, but you got to be able to wear it and forget about it just like the shoes you have on your feet. That's first and foremost.
So I would add maybe one, and maybe it's implied to the list. I think this is great in terms of the design principles, but one thing that we are constantly asking ourselves and checking ourselves on is what problem are we actually solving? And like have that be the main thing, and maybe not assume, some solution searching for a problem to solve. Let's assess what problem we're trying to solve. Question for everybody. I'm going to put it out to you guys. Who here is comfortable right now? Like, are you comfortable? Put your hands up if you can. Are you generally comfortable? Yeah? Okay, that's good. Now, for everyone that put their hands up, I'm going to ask another question. Who here has a wearable on? Okay. How is everyone's hand not up right now? Exactly. Everyone's wearing something, right? You're wearing clothes. I don't see anyone in the birthday suit out here, right? So everyone is wearing clothes. So when we think of design principles and think, why don't we leverage existing technologies and form factors that we're all accustomed to, things that we're already comfortable with, things that don't require retraining or training or things of that nature, and taking on those things. I think that, again, you start to solve some of the issues, or I guess design principles that have been highlighted in this excellent blog here. But again, that's kind of some of the framework that we're looking at. We have kind of three kind of unique perspectives, I would say, on the wearable space. Of course, the consumer focused element. That's one. But we also have the back end. We have supply chain, as I said, and manufacturing that we can help, maybe use technologies in a similar way the rest of the panel has. But we also have a very interesting position because we offer product for those that are in the enterprise and industrial world, right? I mean, Todd, we've had this conversation. We have Timberland Pro boots. We have, Red Cap, which if you're familiar with Red Cap, we have, uniforms and protective garments and things like that. How can we utilize those form factors, those products that we have, and enhance their feature set so that we can offer, everybody, a better experience, a safer experience, more information that can help inform the business and so on and so forth. So,
Great. Yeah, Ben, I've got a follow-up question. So, as you mentioned, you work on both the consumer side and the enterprise side. So, in terms of design principles and the nuances, what do you think are like kind of major difference you see from both sides?
Well, it kind of does depend. So one of the areas that's very interesting is on the retail side of things, right? Imagine, today if you're buying something online, let's say it's Amazon or something like that, you might log on and if you bought toothpaste from them, 5 weeks later you got a little thing suggesting like, hey, would you like to buy some more toothpaste or something like that? And I think we're all getting more and more comfortable with that kind of concierge level service, on our online experience. But what if we could bring that to a retail experience, right? And I hope I'm touching on your answer here, or your question rather, with this answer. What if you walked in the door, and not in a creepy way like, hey Todd, or hey Peggy, kind of thing, but what we could service you and direct you to some area in that retail location that makes your time best spent, to give you something that maybe we knew based on prior information. And I think a lot of times, for instance, like heads-up display, I think it's fabulous in certain applications, but if you walk into a van store and you saw somebody with, maybe a heads-up display, it can be a little disconcerting. It can also not be authentic to our brand and our experience, right? So we think long and hard about, how can we be authentic? What problem are we solving? And taking all those things in consideration as you start to look at solutions. So there's a lot of layers to it, and I think there is no hard and fast. It's case by case, and I think it makes sense for, every situation is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. I see. Todd, you kind of mentioned that you have the smart helmet use cases. Would you be able to share that with our audience today?
It's interesting. It relates to what Ben's saying. I'm a big believer in augmenting the wearables that we already wear as well. I think that's exactly what he was saying. And I mean, you guys are all wearing wearables that are augmenting you right now. You're wearing eyeglasses that's augmenting your vision, right? Some of you ladies are wearing high heels that are augmenting your height, right? So we are already doing human augmentation. We have been for years. Now we're just adding electronics and technology to it. So we're definitely a big believer at focusing on what's already acceptable in our industry. Our guys all wear hard hats. Our guys all wear safety vests. So we're really starting our focus there. How do we make these wearables smarter? And we have been looking at a variety of different smart hats. There's companies out there like Daiquiri. If you haven't checked it out, it's a great looking product. We've gotten to test that a couple times. Just try the prototype. It's a little heavy, talking about ergonomics. That definitely that's not gonna fly. If I'm putting a heavier hard hat on the guy that's worn a hard hat for 30 years, he's not gonna do it. It's gonna make him uncomfortable, and he's gonna have soreness in his neck when he goes home to his family. So we have to hold on to that comfort and wearability when we're augmenting these. But there's lots of others. There's the guard hat. That's worth Googling. Check it out. They're out of Detroit. They're doing a good job of trying to make the technology very invisible, and it's basically very focused on safety, so that whenever something does occur, it then makes itself visible in the sense of, I just sent out a text message to the company, an audible alarm that someone's been injured. So those guys are doing some cool stuff. We haven't gotten any in the trenches yet. I think a lot of these are very early in their designs, but we're really excited about that augmentation of the hard hat, the vest, the boots, anything that our guys have already accepted and are wearing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you. And Lance, I actually have a question for you. So I've seen the differences between the 100 and the 300 you guys are developing. So what are based on those feedback you have received over the years, what are the key things that you have changed, and what are the lessons you guys learned?
One of the things we learned is one size does not fit all.
Mm-hmm.
So the 300 has moved to more of a platform, right? It's a communications platform in terms of its feature set, but it also needs to fit on a hard hat, right. Not a $7,000 hard hat, the one you get at Lowe's, right? The one you get at the Home Depot in a simple way. Frames are good for some people. Mm-hmm. Doctors may need a headband. Pharma may need goggles. You may need a ring scanner. If you're doing 1,000 scans an hour, holding a box up to their glasses, although it'll work, isn't the right solution. So we learned that smart glasses themselves or heads-up displays, they're not a silver bullet. Mm-hmm. They're another arrow in the quiver, so to speak, right? And that's why we made it a platform play, physically, in terms of that. Feature set, being able to connect to different Bluetooth devices and things like that. That's what we learned, but we learned it all from you folks, right? Our friends at DHL are not bashful in telling us what we got right and more what we got wrong. Durability, that's where the durability came from, right? Can you drop it 8 feet? Because our guys are going to do that. Mm-hmm. Things like that. So that was a big learning for us. But again, we walk a tightrope because you all need the features. You all need battery power. You need a good display. You need that GPS. You need the Bluetooth. You need the Wi-Fi. You need all this stuff, but you also want to put it on your head. So we're balancing, looking for that 80-20 rule. My personal view on this is once these devices are taken as a ubiquitous tool in society and used, then we can start looking at more bespoke and customized versions of this. Something for the construction industry, right? Something specific for the warehouse. Something specific for the medical community. intrinsic devices, all that kind of stuff. We said there's a lot of ROI in the higher end, more difficult, more regulated environments, but we've got to get there. And so hopefully the 300 is a good step in that direction, but it's not the final step at all. It's just the next step.
Right, and just like we have heard, the space is really very fragmented, and there are different use cases. It's really case by case. And which moves on to the next topic over here. So how to pick up the right form factor. So this is actually something I'd like to share with everyone here in the room, that research we did. Basically what we did is we looked into the venture capital investment into wearable devices in the past decade. And what we figured out is some of the key, there's a total of $5.2 billion invested into the whole space. And as you can see, most of the money went into specific form factors, but also their investment went into the software and component that can be applied across different form factors. And when we think about different form factors, smart glasses is really taking the hype in the past since 2014. So it's actually has attracted the most investment in the past decade, accumulated to approximately 1.6 billion. And just like you have heard in the last talk, 1.3, 1.4 comes from single transactions into the investment of Magical Leap. And at the same time, what we can see, if you can take a look at the bright blue band over there, that's the form factor of wristband and armband. So there's a lot of money continuously and consistently invested into that. So it's not a simple answer about how to do wearables and what wearable we should do. It really boils back to the principles we just talked about. We have to pick. There's so many things going on. Headset, you have VR headset, you have wristband, you have a body worn. So now let's turn to our panelists. Brian, it's your turn now. Can you share with us the story you have?
So there's no doubt there's choices in the marketplace. We don't, at least in our industry or institution, engage enough in the food service, food and grocery side of this market. And in fact, most of the time we make our money on how we buy versus how we sell. So when we go to market where we're going to something that we want to reduce the ROI to be very flexible for us across multiple temperature zones. Scalability is key. We recently picked up a $500 million account that deployed within 60 days. So something that can bring the market fast. I think often missing from the dialogue, though, is the fact that it also, what it enables us to do behind the scenes. It's not just, for processes. In fact, it enables us to do other things. One way of working is often not mentioned in these dialogues, right? That's absent, but standardization of processes across our environments. The ability when we, safety, right? We talk about user safety. For instance, we can tie in and integrate into our material handling equipment, depending on our choices upstream, so we can do pre and post trips. Often not mentioned. We can then, in food safety on that side of the business, when you go to the grocery stores, I can record using wearables the exact date and time I picked that egg, got it on the truck, got it to market. So I think often mention the dialogue when we go about selecting our forms and what we deploy in market, we're looking at something that can standardize our processes across, be scalable and flexible with our end users. And I think often missing that dialogue, I'll say it again, a little passionate about it, is it kind of forces you in, and I think rightly so, into considering your standard operating processes, how you operate, and how you go to market with your end users. So we recently deployed wearables in our marketplace. We changed some things out, and our company became quite large pretty fast. So we went on a standard implementation processes, and one of the things we learned as we were scaling up was leveraging the wearables for interfacing into labor standards and what you might have heard in the GHL dialogue. So one way of working, scalability, big factors in our choosing our forms.
Great. And Peggy, a question for you. I remember during your presentation yesterday, you also mentioned that you also tested out several different form factors. So can you share some stories around that, like why and how, what are the form factors you tested and why, and that leads to the final decision to use what or not?
Yeah, so we determined a long time ago before we even started that the wearable, especially the smart glass, is not the right solution for everywhere in the plant. So even though everybody wants it right now, There are certain areas where if they don't have to move or they already have we look at our kit carts and they have tablets on them and they're very accessible by the picker, so you have to really weigh those in. But we do know that a lot of people have mentioned the fact that when you scan with any kind of headwear, it's not easy. You have to get down into it. So the ring scanners, the wrist, we're looking at all those technologies. The tablet will remain within our facility, and they just all have to be able to talk. So finding that right business case is really difficult. I talked this morning to Sherwin-Williams, and that first business case is so critical to have it be successful and in the right area for what you're trying to test, right? So the glass for us was the broken tablet and the quality and the safety. And I think there are common points among all of our companies, even though there's different cases. Safety has to be at the forefront, and I think quality is one of the biggest selling factors we all have within our industries. So in the end, we're going to use multiple tools, and the goal then is to have all those tools talking to each other and really augmenting my behavior, right? Which brings us back to the manufacturing 4.0 and the Internet of Things. And it's not going to be the same tool everywhere. We have found, though, that with the eyewear, there's more use for it than we determined on the front end in other areas of the business that we'll be testing out.
Great, thank you. And let me see. So I think we'll probably have some time for the audience. So let's open the panel to any questions for our panelists.
Hi, Roland Joseph with Procter & Gamble. This question is more for Vuzix and the other hardware suppliers. Right now, it seems like you guys are relying solely on an iterative process. You design something, people try it, they give you feedback, and you try again. I'm wondering if you hardware guys would want to hire a consultant and turn it into a science, so that they can do the study for you, and then it'll tell you stuff like, for an 8-hour worker, here is the maximum weight for a head-mounted display. For a 12-hour worker, here is the maximum weight that he can put on. So all these categories, how do you turn it into a science versus we're going to spend the next 10 years trying to iterate ourselves to what those need to be?
I put it this way. We don't hire consultants because you guys do that for us for free. And you do it way better. You do it way better. Again, this is about think tank, conference room pilot, as opposed to on my head, in the sun, on a roof feedback. Some of our best case studies are coming not from the original workflow that was designed for that head-mounted. It's now that this person is wearing it, human beings are awesome, right? They're going to figure out a better, simple, faster way, easier way to get their job done, right? And those are the use cases that are popping out. So they put the glasses on for a remote support, remote maintenance thing, and now they're getting top-line value and using it for quotations and things like that. So I think we may get there sometime where we're really honing it in, but it's such a new industry and a new field that we really need worker feedback. There isn't a big enough pile of that to really dissect it down and turn it into a science yet. We need more data is probably the best way to sum that up. But it's a great point. I hope we get there someday, but right now it's about working together, being open to get that feedback from you folks being open to talking about it. Get out of the closet here and let's talk about using wearables, right? And it's that feedback in this continual loop in the short term that'll get us there, and I hope someday we get down that path where it does become a science.
Hi, Corey Simon with the NASA Johnson Space Center. This question is for Ben, and maybe Todd might have some insight as well. But we did some work early on in electronic textiles trying to understand how do we integrate all these capabilities into the form factors that you're talking about, just like our normal clothing, so our crews aren't forgetting their hardware. They have the capability when they need it. It's invisible, as you talked about. In our experience, the technology just wasn't there. We couldn't get the reliability. There were things that just made it so it wasn't feasible. I'm wondering, just from your perspective, how close are we to being able to do that? What technologies in the manufacturing stream are coming along? Is this something that we maybe actually be able to implement in the next 3 or 4 years, or is this still a kind of a 10-year dream at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm going to build on Lance's kind of comments about collaboration. So a lot of times, I think technology companies have said, we're going to set off on this thing, and you got a lot of smart people that are capable of bringing to life things that people couldn't imagine, but then something falls through the cracks because of the particular use case that they're trying to address. They're just not knowledgeable about it. So I think that, to answer your question, I think collaboration between industries is absolutely critical. So if you start to see who, and these are all public, Under Armour, HTC, Nike, Flextronics, Google, Levi's. They've all decided, you're good at what you're good at, I'm good at what I'm good at, and let's just come together and try to make this thing happen. So as opposed to, we're going to get into the hardware business. It's not going to happen. We're just not interested in it. People have attempted that. I'm not going to call out those companies, and it hasn't worked out well. And so I think the mindset of the industry is finally coming around to the best way to do this is let's just focus on what we're really good at. So to answer your question in terms of timing, I think that it's coming around. We still are a couple of years away from actually seeing anything that's maybe taking on a form factor, as I said, like the clothing, but it's coming, and it's coming soon. Moore's Law is in full effect in this space. So if you're familiar with it, it's getting twice as powerful at the same size or half as small and equal power. So it's really kind of coming down, I think, in a lot of the infrastructure pieces. It's just making sure that those conversations are had between key partners in integrating those technologies and then kind of delivering on a solution.
Great. So how much time do we have? Do we have another? All right. Okay, great. Awesome. We have time for another question. Awesome. We have another Brian.
So this one's for Lance. Going through the different influencers in the design process made me wonder, and I like the M300. Was there an M200, and if so, what was the factor that killed it?
We raised the price, so we had to raise the number a little bit higher. This one goes up to 11 type theory there. No, we had an older product in the 200 range way back in the early days. I don't know if all you know, but Vuzix has been around since 1997, making some crazy head-mounted gear way back in the day, mostly selling it on Sky Mall and things like that. But so there was a 200 in the past. We had to move on to the 300, and if BMW is still here, I will trade you my M3 for your M3 any day. Thank you.
Great. With that, let's thank all the panelists again.